What is the scariest slash creepiest thing you have heard slash seen? It was raining pretty hard one night, and I was about to go to bed. Our dog decided to start going nuts, barking at the corner of the family room. We had just moved in, so there wasn't anything in there, but she just kept constantly barking at nothing. I tried to pull her away, but she wasn't having any of it. She started showing her teeth and snarling, which she never does. I figured there must be an animal outside, so I turned on the deck lights. Deck is off the family room. And peer outside. Nope, nothing. I wasn't about to go outside because of the rain, and I didn't see anything anyway. So I dragged the dog to the bedroom, but she just won't shut up. Finally decide to get my shoes and umbrella on and walk around the house. Found one of my neighbors curled up along the side of the deck trying to protect himself from the rain. He's disabled and a little slow. He usually goes out for walks in the neighborhood. He got caught in the rain and couldn't find his house. If my dog hadn't gone nuts, he might have been out there all night, and who knows what could have happened. I was home alone one night in middle school. I was in my room, which is right above our kid, watching TV. I had already shut off, so I'm laying in my bed. The family dog, a Chesapeake Bay Retriever, was lying next to me when I hear cabinet doors open and shut. It wasn't like they all opened at once and then shut, but more like one after another for a few seconds. I freeze and look at the dog, who at this point was an old lady, who perked up and looked at me. I peek out my window that overlooks our driveway and didn't see anything. Now I didn't think anyone was in the house, because while the dog was lazy AF, she was a great guard dog and she would have responded if the door opened or whatever. So after a few seconds the dog gets up and starts moving towards the stairs, and I decide to follow, fully confident that if anyone was down there she would scare them. I grab my softball bat and my cell phone and follow her downstairs. As we come downstairs I notice the lights are on in the kitchen, and I dial 911 because I know I shut the lights off prior to going upstairs. When we get in the kitchen all the cabinet doors were open, which was obviously not how I left it. That's when I notice that the door was still locked, so I thought whatever did this was still in the house. So I quickly ran upstairs to my parents' closet and called my parents and told them what's up. They came home and obviously didn't find anyone or any trace of anyone being in the house. We still do not know why the light was on and cabinet doors were open, but we had some other paranormal like occurrence happen around that time, so we chalked it up to the household ghost. One night when I was about 12 or 13, my parents were gone for a while, and I was just staying up really late, past midnight, on my desktop computer waiting for them to come home. Like most people, I had been told a million times not to talk to strangers on the internet, but about half my friends list on MSN were people I had never met before, so I was just chatting with a bunch of them. Out of nowhere, one of my online friends had told me exactly what I had been doing the past hour or two. What I was eating, drinking, playing with when I had gotten up last. Things I hadn't mentioned in chat. I instantly got a horrible feeling in the pit of my stomach. My desktop was set up in front of a big window, so as far as I knew, this person I had been talking to, that was supposed to live in a different country than me, had found my address and been watching me through the window. Turns out, he had somehow hacked into my webcam. I always left it plugged in, even though I had been warned not to when I wasn't using it, and he had been frequently watching me through it whenever he wanted. It's been 10 years, and I still have all the cameras on my devices covered in thick duct tape. I was home alone when I was like 9 or 10, whichever you are, in 5th grade. It was literally the second day my mother allowed me to just walk home from school rather than stay at daycare. Phone rings. Voice on the other end asks for David. I tell them sorry, wrong number. As a weird but relevant aside, we got constant wrong numbers when I was a kid because our home phone line was one digit off from H&R Block, tax prep service. So I had developed a sort of standard cadence to wrong number calls. It almost always went, H&R Block. Sorry, wrong number. Oh, I'm sorry. That's okay. So I'm on the line, waiting for him to say oh I'm sorry. Instead, he starts yelling that he needs to speak to David. He *KNOWS** David is there. I tell him I have 2 Uncle Davids, but neither are there. The guy starts cursing and ranting in what, in hindsight, was pretty clearly driven by meth. So I'm already pretty spooked, having never really encountered a fully crazy person in my life. And then he starts describing my house. He starts telling me that it's white with brick pillars on the green porch, red doors, and with a white dog in the backyard. He concludes the call with, "I know you're lying, and I'm gonna come get your ass." In the next 30 seconds I rush to get a knife in the kitchen, call my mom, and look frantically out the front of my house. Then there is a banging / kicking at the door. I screamed at a pitch I didn't realize I could, and I ran into the bathroom, only locking door, and stayed there until my mom got home. When I heard the garage door open and my mom call out for me, I started sobbing and ran out to her, knife in hand. When I got older I found out from my mom that the Uncle David the guy was looking for was a pretty bad drug addict for years, and that's why I hardly ever saw him. He probably gave someone he owed money to a bad address / number. Thanks Uncle David. Someone scoped out my apartment, charged up my stairs, and started banging on the door demanding I open it and talk to her. This chick would not give me a name or what she wanted. Finally threatened to call the cops, and that's when she runs back down my stairs. My husband went out of town for his first work trip following the birth of our first child, so it was me, my infant daughter, and dog at home, and I'm counting it as alone considering I was the only one awake and verbal in the house at the time. Ed just put my daughter down for bed and was in the kitchen cleaning up when I suddenly heard our garage door open. Something that should not be possible with my husband and second of 2 garage door openers, literally in another state. I raced to lock the door coming into the house from the garage and crouched next to it for at least 3 minutes, phone out and dialed to 911, trying to listen for any sounds of intrusion, before cracking the door open just enough to reach my arm through and close the garage again. I did not sleep super well that night, though some of that can be blamed on the nightmare that was my baby's sleep schedule at the time, and had at least 3 more mysterious garage openings overnight in the following week. It turns out that when Ed paired a spare garage door opener the day prior, one of our neighbors was arriving home and just so happened to use their opener at the exact moment I pressed the link button in our garage. It took me an absurd amount of time to make the connection, because they honestly don't go in and out of their house very frequently. In any case, that first instance had me acting out parts of a home intrusion scene in a horror movie. 2 years ago I get home from my last lecture from university before the start of Christmas break. My family had gone to Scotland for the weekend. I was all alone at home for the weekend. Once I arrived at home I showered and was getting food ready. After eating I turned on my PS4, plugged my headset and began playing. However, an hour later I hear loud thudding from upstairs floor. Rather than being brave and checking upstairs I ran to close and lock the living room doors to prevent a robber from entering. I hurried to my phone and called the police, who arrived quickly and began searching. After 20 minutes of searching, they found that someone had broken into my house through my bedroom window. Luckily, no valuables had been taken. I did, however, get a 2-hour lecture from my parents on what precautions to take when home alone. My sister and I were home alone, and we heard noises outside, so we looked out the back door and there's a guy in a ski mask on our back porch going through some stuff. We were hiding and watching him. He looked in through the door window and started knocking. We freaked out and called our dad. It was one of his friends he plows snow with picking up a snowblower, but it was absolutely terrifying before we realized. I was watching a scary movie with my wife when I hear a scratching noise in the wall behind me. I got WTF was that? There was a noise in the wall. Wife doesn't believe me. I hear it several more times and think I'm going insane, and I'm legit starting to freak out. Then she finally hears it too. That's when I learned mice can fall down inside the walls because the top part of the wall in the attic isn't covered. A few years ago I, 24F, got home from work around 10 PM while I was living with my parents, and they happened to be away on vacation that week. After cooking myself a late dinner I went onto the back deck adjacent to the kitchen to grab something I had left out there earlier in the day. A bizarre sound caught my attention, like a dog panting. So of course I searched to see where it was coming from. I looked up to see my neighbor, 40 SM, across the street, standing on his deck buck naked and jerking off. He had been watching me through the window and did not stop when I discovered him. I was home alone after a dinner with my girlfriend. Around 3 AM I hear a very loud bang my dog and I get out of bed to scope it out, hoping to find the reason for the noise. We searched for 15 to 20 minutes and could not find anything. We go back to bed and not 10 minutes later, bang, this time I'm shaking. It sounded like it was coming from the same spot. I spent the rest of night awake, not wanting to move. Found out the next day, girlfriend put 2 sparkling waters in the freezer to cool them down. Forgot about them, left the house, and never told me about them. They exploded. That kept me up all night. Wasn't home alone, but my mom was asleep. I was about 8, and I was taking the trash outside after the sun went down, when a hand reached from the side of our back deck and grabbed my leg trying to yank me. I screamed very loud, and they let go, and I ran inside. Lived in a condo. In the middle of the night I woke up to hear someone rattling my front door knob. No one had keys to my condo except me. Then, the door opened up, and I heard someone walking in. I was 100% sure I was being robbed. Fight or flight kicked in, and I flew out of bed and ran toward the front door screaming, "Get out of here," which came out as complete gibberish as I had been sound asleep about 30 seconds prior and now had crazy adrenaline pumping through my veins. I was literally jumping around in my underwear screaming and waving my arms when it dawned on me that the 2 guys standing at my front door looked more scared than I have ever seen anyone. One of the guys held out some keys, his hands were visibly shaking, and said something to the effect of his friend had given him the keys to his place and said he could stay there while he was out of town. Turns out the friend lived directly above me, and these guys went to the wrong floor. The floors were not numbered and neither were the condo units. By mistake. They didn't know they were at the wrong door and that the keys were the same. I was able to get into his unit with my keys and they could open up my door with their keys. Needless to say, I was standing outside the hardware store the next day waiting for them to open so I could buy a new lock for my door. The very first time I was home alone, I'm watching TV and there's a huge crash bang noise behind me in the kitchen. I didn't look or think. I bolted out the front door and sat on the steps outside, crying, until my folks returned like 10 minutes later. Turns out my mom's bread machine had been kneading the dough and vibrated itself off the counter. Really, the most amazing thing is that the machine wasn't damaged. I have that same bread machine today and it makes delicious fresh bread. Lived in a second floor apartment my junior year of college, and to save money I opened my balcony doors and windows and kept my account off. This particular week my 75-pound dog W, a terrifying bark, was staying with my boyfriend and I forgot to lock my door. Terrible coincidence. Anyways, I woke up in the middle of the night naked in my bed to a man standing in my bedroom. Had no clue what to do. Couldn't jump up BC naked, so instinctively just said, "Yo, WTF." His response was, "I came up to shut your doors and windows," at which point I noticed all was shut. One of the first nights I was home alone with my brother. I was probably 13 or so. Parents went to a concert and left me in charge of my little brother. Just after he goes to bed there's a banging at the door. I'm terrified. I stay quiet and sneak to the window. It was a neighbor from up the road. We weren't friends. He's never been in my house before. I'm wondering why the F*** he wants to come in now. I stood on the other side of the door and said, "My parents aren't home, I can't open the door." Stupid, I know. Never let strangers know there are no adults around. He yells back, "It's getting dark, and I just wanted to let you know that your garage door is wide open." I felt like a schmuck, but I'm still alive. I was home alone with my toddler, getting ready for bed after putting her down for the night when I heard her call for me. So I went to her room and she was fast asleep. Weird. Maybe she had woken up for a moment and then passed out again. Got to the end of the hall before I heard her call for me in a panic. Rushed back in and she was still asleep in the same position. Sat with her for a few minutes and then made my way to bed when I heard my husband call my name. Must have come home from work early, so I go to him, but Hez not there. Call him and confirm Hez still at work and decide I must have hear a neighbor or something. crawl into bed and hear my husband call for me again and then continue talking as if he's having a conversation with someone. Then hear my child calling me again and rush into her room. Still asleep. This goes on for a while until I decide I must really need some sleep and go back to bed with the lights on. Too freaked out to sleep, I was staring at a picture hanging on the wall when it disappeared. Like the wall just ate it? Look at another wall hanging and the same thing happens. They would reappear when I looked away and then be eaten by the wall again when I looked directly at them. Decide I'm officially an insane person and call husband to come home. Fall asleep eventually and wake up and everything is normal except my heart rate can't decide on a pace, swinging up and down between 30s 180s. Head into the hospital and I'm having a hypertensive crisis. Turns out it was the beta blockers had started recently. Nobody had heard of that reaction, so they kept me for a couple days until my numbers stabilized. No hallucinations after the first night other than hearing dogs bark randomly for a couple days. Not good times. 7-year-old me was playing with a doll I had got for my birthday in the doorway of my apartment on the 3rd floor of a 3-story building. My dad was outside in the parking lot working on his car as he often did, and me playing in the hall was pretty common as I had a friend who lived directly across from me who I was waiting to come home and play with. It was the 80s, so being unsupervised was more acceptable. Suddenly this man I've never seen before walked up the stairs and approached me asking where my parents were. I told him my dad's outside in the parking lot and my mom's at work. I assumed he was a friend of my sister who was in her 20s as he looked the same age. He said he couldn't just leave me alone and picked me up and threw me over his shoulder. I figured he was just overreacting and going to take me to my dad, but he made his way to the opposite door from the parking lot towards a side street where his car was. Just then my dad turned the corner, as he just happened to have gone over to the other side to secretly smoke a joint, and asked the guy what was going on. The guy put me down and said something about thinking I needed help and took off. My dad, being stoned, didn't really react beyond WTF. Okay. Kidnapping attempt foiled. My sister didn't know him and she was living with a BF in another city. House sitting / babysitting for a new neighbor. She was a single mom from the East Coast, moved to Indianapolis. I was a 6th grader. All I had to do was sit in the house and do my math homework while she was on a date. Her 2-year-old baby was sleeping in his crib/room. Around 9 PM I get a call and answer. It's some man who only asks who are you? I say I'm the babysitter. Then he starts asking all these questions about where the mom is and who I'm personally. I get scared and hang up and call the mom and let her know. The guy calls back and then just starts saying the address I'm at, then asks if the baby is okay. When I say yes, he says, how can you be so sure when has that close to a window? To which I just go, I'm just the babysitter and I'm trying really hard on my math homework and now I'm scared and I'm also failing math. Basically a mental breakdown happened. 5 minutes later the mom shows up and explains it's her ex-husband who found her. She hands me a wad of cash and excuses me. IDK if the guy was in the bushes or calling from Massachusetts or what. It was scary. Not me, but my cousin. He was living in an apartment in a shady part of Madison and some jerk-off was trying doors in his building. Was laying on the couch watching a movie, facing away from the door, when his front door opened. From the light in the hall he could make out a silhouette reflected in his TV, but he wasn't expecting anyone. He told me he was scared *********************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************** without turning around. Get the F asterisk asterisk K out of here. Now, asterisk whoever it was did exactly that. I don't know what I would have done in that same situation. So was out of town on business, so I treated myself and ordered in from my favorite restaurant. Delivery guy arrived and insisted he had to come into my place to deliver the food and take payment. I had to loudly refuse this multiple times in the hopes a neighbor would hear me, and he kept insisting. Finally got him to process my payment in the hallway, but he was muttering under his breath the whole time. Scared the hell out of me. I double locked the door when he left and sat up all night feeling uneasy. Wish I had reported him to the restaurant, but I was too shaken to think about it. I wasn't at home, I was working the night shift at a nursing home. I'm an RN. Now to say it was just me and a CNA, and we were the only staff in the Alzheimer's unit. She had the TV on some stupid show about hauntings in America. She looks at me and says, yeah, I'd think nursing homes would be haunted a lot. I just gave her a look and told her to shut up. This place is creepy enough at night. We go to do rounds on a resident who was in the process of passing. She was on hospice and her family was aware. I checked on her every 15 minutes because I didn't want her to be. At this time, she wasn't in distress, but it was obvious she wasn't going to last. Her family lived across the country and had requested not to be called past 9 p.m. So I stayed with her and held her hand and read to her from the Bible as she was a devout Catholic. After all of the aftercare was finished, the CNA and I had been in the room for 15. I left to call the funeral home and all of that. It barely dialed the phone number when the CN. I don't know what to do. She was obviously freaked. I went to the resident's room and she was definitely breathing. I checked vital signs and though everything was much lower than normal, I'd checked them several times after she'd passed and there had been no blood pressure. Nope. She lived for another 5 years and claimed she'd met God. This is the creepiest thing that has ever happened to me. I was nursing my newborn in the house we had newly built and just moved into. We didn't have a fence yet, and the back of the house was basically all huge picture. I'm in the bedroom, topless, when I see a guy come right up to the glass door in the room and peer in. I screamed and jumped up / away. He didn't try to get in or anything, him not even 100. When I told my husband about it, he said it was probably an older contractor from the area. I know he was innocent, but it scared me to death at the time. Make sure to like and subscribe for more daily content. Thanks for watching.